Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Miss Marvel, Batgirl, and many more. Since our childhood, we have been fascinated by female superheroes around us. But at the end of the day, even with all of their amazingness and superpower, they are merely a part of a fictional world brought to us by actresses. A world that's made by production houses and comic books. But today I'm going to tell you about a superwoman that's just as real as me and you. A woman whose story needs to be told. A woman who went against all odds and did what no one could have bet can be done, and that too by a woman. There's a well-known saying that a mother gets extreme strength when it comes to her child, and now after this case, I'm 100% sure that it's true.
And she threw out a machete, and I'm like, what in the world have I gotten myself into?
You didn't worry about the risks.
I don't worry about the risk. I just wanted to know the truth.
So come with me as I tell you about the case of Mary Rose and Annette Craver. A story where a mother was able to catch a killer, and not just any killer. I'm talking about a serial killer here. A killer who was living in our society as a normal citizen, and authorities like police, FBI, or any intelligence agencies had no idea that what to do with files of unsolved cases sitting on their tables. So what actually happened? How did this mother catch the killer, and how's her daughter related to the case? Well, you better hold on to your seats, because this is surely an interesting one. The background. Mary Rose was a single mother living in Houston, Texas, who was left alone to raise her daughter Annette Craver after her father was killed in a car accident. Annette, like most of the teenagers, always had a thing for music, and by the age of mere 14 years old, she was a budding singer and songwriter. However, during the summer of 1981, the mother-daughter duo was planning to move to San Antonio, so Annette could attend a special private school which was for people who wanted to enter in the medical field. Entry of Felix Vale. In order to raise some money for the move, Mary and Annette went to a friend's yard sale in Montrose, Houston with some of their belongings.
This is your friend Annette, and here is your long-awaited tape. Hope you like it.
She spent a lot of time alone. She was always writing poetry and drawing, picked up the guitar.
This kind of solitude and isolation concerned Mary.
Annette, I'm sure, missed her dad more than I realized. I even asked her one time if she thought she needed to see someone to talk, and she said, "No, Mom, I'm fine."
Now this was the place where 41-year-old Felix Vale met the 15-year-old Annette for the first time. They talked a bit, and Felix thought that he could make this girl his new girlfriend. Mary moved to San Antonio with her daughter, but she was finding it difficult to secure a job in the area, so she relocated to Tulsa, Oklahoma, while Annette started to live with a teacher close to her school. All of this time, Felix remained in contact with Annette, with Felix even visiting him sometimes.
She did mention in letters that Felix stopped by, but I didn't know that there was intimacy, and then I learned that Felix made many, many visits. I regret that I left, and she even said to me in a letter, "I feel like you abandoned me."
In 1982, she graduated and moved to Tulsa to live with her mother. The troubling affair and marriage. After some time, Felix showed up in Tulsa too, and he and Annette went on a cross-country trip together. A trip that went on for a whole year, and her mother was made aware of it at the very last moment.
Oh my gosh, why didn't I do this differently? All the decisions I made that I would do differently now.
On the 15th of August, 1983, the couple was married. Now Annette, being a 17-year-old, needed permission from her mother for the marriage, and like any concerned parent, Mary wasn't willing to give her permission.
I said, "Why don't you wait till you turn 18? This is a big mistake." She said, "I love you, Mom, and we'll go to Mexico and get married."
But after some convincing and emotional blackmail from the daughter, Mary ended up giving her permission.
I don't want to estrange her from me, and I trusted her, and I didn't know he was a bad guy.
According to Mary, weird things started happening soon after the marriage. Her daughter's personality was changed heavily under Felix's influence. 4 months after the marriage, on 7th of December, Annette officially became an adult and got a $100,000 check from her father's life insurance policy. She took out all the money, that too in cash, and according to Mary, gave it all to Felix, who was in control of all of Annette's finances. During all of this time, Annette seldom contacted her mother, who now was living alone in their Tulsa home. In April 1984, Annette came back to live with her mother, saying that she wanted to get a divorce and go to college. She told her about Felix's rage, jealousy, and his violent behavior.
But she was not herself. She was so confused. When we were painting the downstairs and she looked into the camera with this intense look on her face, like, what do you want from me? I think she was just overwhelmed with the way he had tried to control her and mess with her mind.
After some days, she received a letter from her husband, and with it, she was back under Felix's spell. Soon, Annette became a totally different person, and the couple pushed Mary out of her own home, who then moved to California to live with some friends. The daughter disappears. After some months of Mary's move to California, Annette told her that Felix killed both of her cats because they disturbed him. By August of that year, Felix was the sole owner of Annette's house, who, just like her mother, was pushed out of the will. According to the neighbors, the couple went on a vacation in fall. But when October started, it was only Felix who came back.
And what he told me was that he had put her on a bus and that she was going to Mexico. I hung up and called the police and filed a missing persons report.
The 18-year-old Annette had vanished just like that after this vacation. When Mary found out about this, she called Felix, who said that Annette decided to leave Felix in Mexico, so he put her on a bus with $50,000, and he has never seen her since then. On 22nd of October, Mary reported her daughter as missing, and soon after this, Felix filed for a divorce from Annette. Felix's official statement was much different to what he had told Mary in the past. According to his statement to the police, Annette left him on the 15th of September, just 2 days after they had left Tulsa.
They believed Felix. He convinced them that she had left on her own. After I wrote to the DA, they didn't respond, so...
He then drove her to the Trailways bus station in St. Louis, Missouri, from where she boarded a bus to Denver, where she planned to get a fake ID and leave for Mexico. A mother's investigation. After this, Mary decided to take matters in her own hands and returned to Tulsa in hope of finding some clues about her daughter.
Yes, I wanted to believe she was alive. I waited and waited. I sat by the phone and I kept waiting for a call. Christmas, her birthday, my birthday, Mother's Day. I would stay close to a phone on those days in those early years, thinking this is it. This is the day she's going to say, "Hi, Mom."
When Felix was of no help, she broke into the house where Annette was staying, but the house didn't have anything belonging to Annette. However, she did find some strange things there, which included several notes written by Annette, her ID cards, her passport from which her picture was ripped off. In one of those notes, she had written how she had paid off Felix's debt, bought him a car, and deposited money in his accounts.
I said, all right, if she's trying to get away from her mother, why isn't anybody else hearing from her? She had family.
Mary finally moved back to Tulsa in 1987, but this move didn't help her much to find Annette. 4 years later, frustrated with the police who weren't able to do anything in the case, Mary decided to start a proper investigation. She removed the back seats from her car to make some sleeping space for herself and drove 2,000 miles straight to Canyon Lake, Texas, in order to meet Sue Jordan, Felix Vale's sister. Now this is where things get interesting. Sue told Mary some information that immediately brought life to a dying case. According to Sue, Felix's first wife had drowned back in 1962, and there was another one of his girlfriends that had gone missing too.
She told me that Felix had a wife who had drowned.
Cases from the past. After this new information, Mary started some digging and came to know that Felix Vale's first wife was Mary Hortum, whom he met in the 1950s and married on July 1st, 1961. A year later, she gave birth to a baby boy named Bill, and a year later, she was pregnant again.
A lady calls me and says, "You don't know me, but Felix Vale married my daughter, and she's missing." And I said, oh my God. My sister was so very special, so thoughtful, kind.
During this time, weird things started happening, like she started receiving threatening phone calls and their house got broken into too. Mary suspected that Felix had done something wrong and wanted to divorce him, but her religious mother convinced her not to.
She had thoughts of leaving Felix. That's why she was there, talking to my mom. My mom suggested that she go back and try to work things out. and then they would have another conversation. But she died before there was another conversation.
On 28th of October 1962, Felix told police that his wife had fallen into the Calcasieu River while they were laying trot lines. Authorities recovered her body 2 days later, and her funeral was held on Halloween. Police arrested and questioned Felix for some time, but they had to let him go when the coroner reported that Mary's death was because of an accidental drowning.
He was absolutely a suspect in her death.
But he was released 3 days later. Why?
The coroner, at the time, ruled that the death was an accidental drowning. As a prosecutor, how do I prosecute a murder case when the coroner says it's not a murder? So they really had to let him go.
After some years and moving to different places, Felix took his son to San Francisco, where he met a 20-year-old girl from North Dakota named Sharon Hensley. They soon started dating and started to hitchhike with Bill around California. This was the time when one day Bill overheard his father confessing to Sharon that he had killed Bill's mother. Bill told this information to police, and for some time Felix was arrested too. But once again they didn't charge Felix with Mary's murder, and he was let go. In 1972, Felix and Sharon visited Sharon's hometown in North Dakota, and just like Mary Rose, Sharon's parents didn't like Felix one bit.
At that point, I believe she was with him out of fear. She didn't know how to get out of the situation.
After moving from here, Sharon informed her mother that they were going to New Orleans and Miami to make some pornographic films, and then they'll travel through South America. In February 1973, she sent the last letter to her home, which contained her photograph with the caption, "Making travel notes."
When my mom got off the phone, she told my dad, "Sharon's in deep trouble. She's crying out for help."
This was the last time anyone from the family had any contact with Sharon. When Sharon's mother, Peggy Hensley, asked Felix about her daughter, he sent her a letter in March 1974, writing that Sharon left Key West, Florida, with an Australian couple named John and Vanessa, who had plans to travel the world.
The letter that we received from Felix was just bizarre. I remember plainly, clearly, just like, oh my God, this is such BS.
Felix told his own mother that the Australian couple were named Frank and Sally. And according to Bill, his father told him that Sharon wouldn't bother anyone else. Investigation continues. Now that Mary had all of this new information, she contacted Peggy, who verified all of Mary's findings. With this new information, Mary went to the FBI, scheduling a meeting with them.
They had a special agent there that was working on serial killers and cold cases. He told me, "I believe you're absolutely right. We are dealing with a serial killer."
She even contacted Bill, who was ready to testify against Felix. But unfortunately, nothing happened, and once again, all the cases were put on shelves. Bill, who was the major part of this case, died of esophageal cancer in 2009. Now, during all these years, Mary had been in contact with various people from the two previous cases, and most of them believed that Felix was indeed involved in both of them.
I felt shame that I had gotten all the families excited about this, so it was a big letdown for me.
Even though things fizzled out, she continued to search for someone to take a look at our situation. She just had that burning desire to want to get this guy so bad. She was consumed with it.
After almost 3 decades without Annette, I continued just doing my life, and I realized then I need help. I need some healing here.
In 2012, the investigation was resumed. The charges and arrest. During the investigation, Isaac Abshire Jr., the person who had searched the river for the first wife's body and in whose house Vale had rented a room for a short time, was questioned again. He stated that during the early investigation, everyone believed Felix was the murderer. When he recovered her body, a scarf was tied around her neck, shoved into her mouth, and tied up in a knot. Mary had an extreme fear of drowning, but despite this fear, she wasn't wearing any of the 2 life preservers in Felix's boat. And this wasn't all. Mary's death certificate had a lot of errors. It had wrong dates of birth and death, while Felix's signature was most likely forged. Mary also had heavy bruises on the backside of her head and legs.
She had a scarf wrapped around her mouth and her neck. And her neck was all swollen around it, like it was sunk in. It looked like a big old knot, but it wasn't a woman's knot.
So without him, without his testimony introducing the photos, I can't prove it's a murder. Ike Abshire was the key to the entire case.
Seeing this evidence, police finally arrested Felix Vale on 17th of May, 2012. In 2016, Felix Vale was convicted for murdering his first wife, Mary Horton, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He challenged the decision, but it was upheld in 2018. New revelation in Annette's case. Police found Annette's overnight bag in their previous home in Tulsa in 2013. With this new finding, police also discovered that Annette was seen by some family members in October 1984, which, by the way, was almost a month after Vale said she had left him. The two had visited her relatives in Sulphur, Louisiana. After this revelation, Felix's story had totally fallen apart.
Mary was sitting next to me, and Brian was sitting next to Mary, and we were holding hands.
We've become a family. The best part of this whole ordeal was getting to meet Mary Rose and getting to meet Will.
And when they said guilty, really no words to describe it. It just felt so good that finally, mission accomplished.
Sadly, the disappearance of Annette was left unaccounted for, but more verdicts wouldn't have added much to Vale's sentence. In the eyes of Mary Rose, truth prevailed nonetheless.
The most important thing for me was that he was be convicted of murder, whether it was just for Mary Horton or all three women, and that he would serve the rest of his life in prison. This was it. He was never going to get out of jail.
Conclusion. Mary Rose's hard work and bravery surely brought closure to two other families and helped apprehend a killer, but as of now, no one's aware of Annette or Sharon. Their bodies haven't been found, and no further revelations were made in either of the two cases. Felix wasn't charged for the disappearance of both girls, and he still claims that they are alive. I'll see you soon with another interesting case. Until then, adios.